So you clicked on this video because you want to know what the verdict is after 1 year of fishing the KastKing Royale Legend. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you guys a no bullshit assessment of this reel. So let's go ahead and let's break into this. There's a lot of other videos out there that are going to talk about the features of this reel and how awesome this reel is. I'm going to try to sell you this reel. I'm not sponsored by KastKing at all. I'm not going to try to sell it to you. I just want to give you guys my honest opinion. When I originally bought this reel, my whole goal actually was just to put it through the paces and just test it. Everyone gets excited for a really budget-friendly option that's out there. Everyone's trying to save money, right? And KastKing is really good at helping people do that, and part of it has to do with their business model. If you don't know much about the company, KastKing is able to offset a lot of the operational and distribution costs that are associated with other products that you'll see in the fishing world because they're not in big box stores. You're never going to find a KastKing in a Bass Pro Shops. You're going to find it in a Cabela's, Academy, whatever. You have to find it online. So because they do it pretty much from online to consumer, they're able to pass down a lot of the cost savings to you and I, which is awesome, right? We all want to save money. That being said, as the first reel that I picked up from KastKing, I figured, hey, this is probably the most reviewed reel that's on Amazon. You can pick this up on Amazon. And it's the most budget-friendly option with the best reviews, right? There's some other reels I'm sure that are out there that are cheaper, but for $40, okay, you can get a pretty feature-rich reel that has a lot of fishability that's going to catch you a lot of fish. Obviously, if you go online and you look at the reviews on Amazon, a lot of people are happy with it. There's also going to be people who aren't. And a lot of the people who aren't, a lot of it has to do with, really, it's just, factory problems that they had with the reel from what I read. And also, too, depending on what type of fisherman you are and how often you fish, is also going to depend how much you really like this reel. So you guys can go online and take a look at all the specs and stuff. I'll cover a little bit of that in the video if I get to it. But really, I just wanted to talk to you guys about my thoughts after putting this thing really through the ringer for a whole entire year, right? For 1 year of use, okay, the construction of this reel is really, I'm really impressed by it. I'll just say that. I have fished this thing in the river, lakes, ponds, in the rain, dropped it in water. I really normally keep a rod with me in the car almost every day. And this was a great little daily and weekend warrior for me that performed pretty well. I've caught a number of fish on this. And I've really put it through a beating. It's been dropped both in the water, on the ground, in the mud. As I mentioned, fished it through the rain, through grass, riprap. Lots of different lures have been thrown on this reel, and it's held up really well, okay? So I think one of the biggest merits to this reel is its construction. As I mentioned, if you go online, you're going to read the reviews on Amazon, you're probably going to find some people who will say, it's crap, it broke on me on the first thing, but I would argue that the majority of the people who you're going to read are really pleased with this reel. I obviously can't speak to how much other people have fished this reel or how hard they've fished this reel, but I can tell you this thing has been put through its paces, at least mine, right? Still really smooth. You probably can't hear anything, but there's really very little sound coming from it. I've never cleaned this thing. I've never added any lubricant or any other grease, and it's held up awesome. So first thing, construction. It's awesome. I think for the bang for the buck, you're getting a good deal here, okay? Performance-wise, this is where I'm torn, right? I've had some really great days with this reel, and I've had some really big heartache-filled days with this reel, and I'll go into that why, and I'll share why. So, for a $40 baitcasting reel, you want to get something obviously that's going to perform, right? $40 is cheap, but it's not the cheapest thing that you could possibly get. Or spend your money on, and I'm just talking in general. So for me, like $40, it's a fair amount of money to spend on anything, okay? When it comes to fishing products, obviously, this is like probably one of the most affordable options that you have out there. So really, how does it hold up? Like, what's its merit? And I think ultimately, its fishability is top notch. Okay, this is where I'm going to go over some of the features. But you got 17.5 pounds of drag on this thing, which is much more probably than what you would ever need. Okay. The nice thing about that is that a lot of people are probably going to get this just for bass. But it can be used for a lot of other freshwater applications, right? I've heard of people catching salmon on this reel, striper on this reel. I'm sure anybody who's watching this from the Midwest or back east who are catching other larger freshwater species too, they've had experience with it. So ultimately, I think that was one of the things probably KastKing wanted to do, was give something that wasn't just, even though a lot of people will fish it for bass, it can be fished with a lot of other applications, okay? So that's the first thing, okay? Second thing, right? I mean, it's a plastic reel, okay? If you're gonna chuck this around, things are probably gonna break. Now, I abuse my gear because I use it. I don't try to be rough on my gear for no apparent reason. But I bring stuff out with me almost every day, right? I fish as much as I possibly can. And ultimately, this has held up really well. You have an aluminum spool on the inside, right? Obviously, you have other metallic and aluminum parts on the inside. The knob, right? The drag. And also to the spool tension knob, right? All aluminum, okay? So that's a nice extra little touch, right? You're not just getting a full plastic reel. It is actually constructed, I think, pretty well. So as far as the performance goes, this is where I had a lot of fun catching fish when I could get this thing calibrated right. And that was one of the things that I struggled with probably the most. One of the nice things about this reel, as you can hopefully see if this focuses, is you have magnetic brakes on the outside, okay? And if I can get this open. Okay, finally got it open. And you also have your centrifugal brakes on the inside. So you have a lot of different ways to control the reel right out of the box with, for a $40 reel, that's pretty awesome. When I first started this, I had all 4 of these notches disengaged, okay? If you move the notches down, that adds more friction to the spool, right? Which obviously is going to give you a little bit more control. A lot of people will fish with all 4 on this reel. That's the consensus that I've come to. I fished it with 3 once I figured it out. The first day when I took this out, I didn't pay attention to this at all. Just kept it totally frictionless and only used the magnetic brakes, and I paid for it. It wasn't until finally after like 2 hours I kind of figured out what I was doing wrong. So that was totally operator error, okay? But once I got that dialed down and figured out, this thing really worked well with heavier baits. So, as I mentioned, right, you have a lot of fishability with this. You're going to be able to throw a lot of different lures. I've thrown spinner baits, square bill, it's worms, jigs, really every type of bass fishing lure that you can possibly throw. It's been used on this, right? I've thrown it with mono. I've put braid on this. I've put fluoro on this. I've used pretty much any type of standard lure and standard line that you could find just to see how this performed. Ultimately, I found that braid actually performed the best on this, but mono and fluoro performed fine. It was just more finicky over time. That's all that I found. So with that being said, right, going back to the brakes, once you get this dialed down, it can really handle, probably I'd say medium to heavier lures really well. I had a really tough time throwing light lures on this thing. There's other people on YouTube who have done videos showing you how to throw light lures on this, but I'm just telling you right now that I struggled with it, and I would bet that a lot of other people probably do as well. Part of that's operator error. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure there's certain ways that I can improve that, but also too, this isn't going to be as forgiving, right? So if you're throwing your standard, 3/8 ounce to ½ ounce weights, like this thing is going to be awesome. Even less than that, like 1/4 ounce, right? I'd say this thing, you'll be able to get some good performance out of this. If you're trying to throw a weightless Senko, for me, I would tell myself good luck. I've seen other people do it before online. Obviously, looking at this reel, I wanted to get as much information as I could, and they were able to do it fine. Just not me, okay? Another great thing about this reel too, it's geared in 7, I don't know if you can see that, but 7.0 to 1. So as I mentioned, right, throwing all those different lures, 7.0 to 1, in my opinion, is kind of a nice sweet spot gear ratio for a reel, especially for a starter reel, because you can really slow things down just on your retrieve. You can fish things fast. It kind of gives you a lot of different options to fish different applications, which is nice. So, I think KastKing had this in mind. They wanted to give something that was really well constructed, had really good fishability, and also too, out of the box, you could put anything on the end of the line here and go ahead and have success out there on the water, which is awesome. Another great thing about this, too, are the foam grips. This is probably like my favorite thing. One of my favorite things about this reel is the fact that the grips they're really comfortable. The other reels that I have don't have foam grips, but I find that I actually like them. They're big, they're easy to hold. I've never slipped off. Obviously, when your hand's wet, or if you're fishing in the rain or whatnot, obviously you're around water, your hand's not slipping off of this. It's really nice. So ultimately, I think it's a really feature-rich budget option. This is the only reel, though, I will say, where I've had days where I've just wanted to put this thing down and not fish it any longer. Just because of all the backlashes and the bird's nest and the problems calibrating this that I had. And that's personally just my experience with it. I think if you're looking for an entry-level baitcaster, this is a great option for you if you're fishing once a week, a couple times a month, once a month, right? To go out there and throw your basic bass lures around, But if you're more of if you go out and you fish a few times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, hopefully you're going to get some good performance out of this reel, but at the same time too, you're also going to want to probably go to something that's a little bit more of a step up, I would say, than this reel. Just because, right, you expect that performance when you're out there as much as that on the water. I try to fish, as I mentioned, as much as I can, and it's not all the time that I'm able to go. So when I go, I want my stuff to be working as best as it can, and I don't want to waste time trying to pick out birds' nests and recalibrate everything on a reel when I get out there. I have limited time sometimes during the day to go out and get on that fish, and any help that I can get or give myself, I'm going to give to myself. So, take that with a grain of salt. As I mentioned, I think this is, it's a really good budget, feature-rich reel that's constructed really great. Ultimately, I think whoever fishes with this, they're going to be pretty happy with the reel, okay? That being said, if you fish a lot, the performance to you might be meh. It's kind of turned into that for me. I'll still use this reel, and it's great as a backup for me, but it's not my daily fishing reel anymore. I know that I'm comfortable, and I feel comfortable keeping it with me in my backpack when I go as a backup reel, and it's something that I have had fun fishing. Okay. Another big thing too is that it's a chunky reel, right? It's clunky. If you look at the other KastKing reels, obviously the higher price you go, the less it's going to weigh. So this is definitely, I think, probably their heaviest reel that they offer. That's a baitcaster. But for $40, it's a great option for the budget angler, weekend warrior, somebody who really doesn't want to break the bank and have fun fishing. Ultimately, would I purchase it again, knowing what I do now? Yeah, I probably would. I'd probably get this reel again and use it as a good starting reel. Now that I've used it for a year and kind of put it through its paces, would I get one of KastKing's higher end reels if I were to try another KastKing project? Absolutely. I would for sure do something different. So I'd say, if you're going to be fishing a lot, you might want to consider going one step up and go to some of the other reel offerings that they have, like the Spartacus or the Royal Legend Elite. They just came out with a new series last year that's an offshoot of this that's gotten really good reviews. As I mentioned, I haven't fished with any of those, so I can't speak to them. But if this is a good testament, right, for their starter reel as a first baitcaster, it does give me hope that the next steps up that you're going to fish with are going to be even better reels. So, yeah. ultimately, I'm happy with it. It's a good spare reel for me, and for anybody who's just starting out and looking to get into bait casting, this is a great option. So with that, thank you guys again for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next video.